so I just steal it from somewhere. So let's start with this particular thing. As you can see, there are various components. So at least the boxes towards the bottom, those are something like which we are familiar with, which we are aware of. But there are certain things on the top section in the figure, those we haven't discussed at all, I guess. Okay, or we discussed, but like we haven't discussed in depth. So I thought like let's have quick discussion on those particular points and try to understand its implication, its connection with the capabilities approach. Okay, but I won't be in position to go in depth. We won't be able to discuss those concepts at a stage. Might be having a very brief discussion about those, and we'll just try to establish the connection with capabilities approach. So let's start with that. What I would do is like I'll just allow you to go through the figure. So let me wait for a couple of minutes. You go through the entire figure, and then let's start the discussion. So I would like to invite your views on this particular thing. What do you mean by this? What is your understanding? And then we'll build further on that. So I'll just wait for a minute or two. Okay. Let's start. Let's first discuss the bottommost portion, because that is something like part of it we are aware of. So can somebody explain the first box, which is talking about the market and non-market productions and few other things. So can somebody explain like what are those points, and then what is it trying to say?
I think the non-market production and the market production, net income, transfers in kind, and goods and services. This is, I think, what we listed yesterday with respect to resources.
Yes.
And
Yes.
so that is the column that is mentioned in the lower box.
Right.
Uh,
Right.
yeah.
Yes, yes, perfect. So it's talking about the commodities and the resources which we had discussed. And then one important thing to notice, like yesterday we had listed the resources, but here they are explaining the means with which you can purchase the resources. So in the sense like it's referring to let's say income, which is having a certain value which can be translated into a resource. Okay, it might not be resource directly. So if you want to go to school, then you need access to bus. So bus is one of the resource. So here it is mentioning that bus might not be listed directly, but they are like referring to income or availability of fund, which can be converted into those resources. So that is one slight difference. Okay. Yes. Any other things? And then those you can see in the next box where goods and services. So those are basically the absolute resources. Now you use funds or available income and then translate those into the products or goods or commodities or required services. Okay, or you hire, you purchase, whatever it is, then you do that. Then let's move to the next thing, that is about the individual conversion factors, which we had discussed earlier as well. So it really depend on individual, how they translate those resources into uh, capabilities. Okay, and now we have the next box is capability set, where like it's a set of opportunities. Then we come across the choices. So those choices might be individual choices, and then finally it get translated into achieved functioning, that is the final achievement. Okay, so this is one particular process or different steps involved in the capabilities approach, right? Now let's come to the topmost portion. So what do you understand by social context? What it is trying to say? Any guesses after looking at the figure and the points mentioned over there?
Uh, if the goods and services, like the resources and the commodities, are available,
Mm-hmm.
then social context is the rules and regulations that will influence the individual conversion factors. For example,
Mm-hmm.
even if uh, I think if other people's behaviors and characteristics are influencing the individual, then
Mm-hmm.
the conversion factor from the utility, not utility, the wrong word, the
Quality.
utilization of the products into the transferring of goods and services into the capability, that is going to
Mm-hmm.
affect the individual and how the person wants to view it as.
Yes, yes, yes. Very important. Any
And
other?
hence that
Yeah,
will
please.
also, the social context will continue to affect or influence the capability set as well.
Mm-hmm.
And uh, because the individual, actually, here is a point where the choice part is also coming into play, but because choice is placed after capability set, I'm not able to use it over here.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So
Okay.
like how I am seeing it as, if there is a commodity or a resource available, it
Hmm.
is the person's choice to turn it into a capability. That is
Right.
how I'm seeing, and that choice is influenced by social context.
Yes. Yes. So I guess as you can see that like there are two mentions. So one is like commodities getting converted into capabilities. Within that also we do have individual conversion factors, and obviously as you rightly mentioned, like those individual conversion factors are also having those are also based in the society. Those are also having a social influence on it. Secondly, once you have capability set, after that, like from that particular set, what you choose, that is also getting affected by the social context. So,
I think while
like,
we use the resources or we tend to use the resources, we can't forget the social bindings or
yes,
the implications that rules and regulations have on your product, which whether it is a non-market product or it's a market product.
mm-hmm. Yes, yes. So,
You have to follow certain norms, you have to follow certain things. Though you
yes,
cannot bypass them.
right, right, right. Yes. So, basically, you are talking about the laws or the norms. It could be just a cultural norm, or there could be certain things which are coming through, let's say, value system or a culture, or might be religious ideological positions. So there could be a number of factors which will ultimately influence on our conversion of commodities into capabilities. That is what you're trying to say.
Exactly.
Yes, yes. Surely it has like a good amount of impact on our choices, rather our conversion of commodities into capabilities, right? Yes. Any other thing you can infer from this particular diagram? So nobody spoke about the preference formation and then social influences and all those aspects. Any thoughts on that? Hello. Yes. So nobody has mentioned anything about the preference formation and then social influence on decision making. So I consider like it is also based in the social context. Um, so what are the preferences people have? Those are completely influenced by the various factor, in the sense by the social factor. How society perceive to be good, based on that people make their preferences, people make their choices. And that is one thing like they're just trying to highlight. There's one more aspect which is also being highlighted here, that is about the uh, person's history and psychology. Can somebody give certain example like what it is exactly? How does personal history does matter in this case? And if it does really matter, like can you give any example?
I think psychologically it is very important to know the history, like bipolar, anxiety, all these things
Hmm.
matters.
Okay. And then it will influence the choices, that is what you're trying to say.
Yeah,
Yes, yes. And that is exactly what people is utilizing nowadays, in the sense like during corona everybody is in panic. Okay. And then based on that people are selling their products, they are like forcing our choices. I
right,
was
right.
always against using sanitizer or this kind of products, but now due to the influences out there, and they're ultimately like influencing my psychological state, even though like I'm against using this kind of products, but I'm not in a very healthy psychological state right now. It's like very much influenced by the news around me, and then basically it forced my choices. So I had to like change it, and then now I'm using sanitizers. So this kind of thing. Secondly, it is mentioning about the personal history, in the sense the kind of experiences we had earlier. If I had like bad experiences about something, then there is like high chances that I won't take those particular choices. I won't take the same route again. I will try to avoid those kind of experiences. So ultimately, then my choices will be very different. In the sense, like if let's say if I went to if I want to go to Mumbai, and then for that purpose, I'm like taking any certain train. But if I get like bad experience with that particular train, next time I will try to avoid that. I'll just try to look for a better option. I may choose uh, to travel by my own car. So these kind of possibilities are there, right? So ultimately my previous experiences will influence my current choices. Okay. And in this particular case, uh, whatever the capability set I have, from that particular capability set, what I pick and work further to convert it into achievement, that will also be influenced by my earlier experiences. Okay. So let's say uh, if I want to earn money, and that is something you can assume as my functioning which I want to achieve. And for that purpose, like I do have capabilities set, I have like various options available over there, right? So I decide to pick certain thing and then earn money. So how I can earn money? I can earn money using uh, by delivering these sessions. I can earn money by working with some organization. I can earn money by starting my own business. But if my earlier, if I had certain experiences where like my business was not running well, and then due to that, like manufacturing certain product and selling it is not my cup of tea. That is what like I had decided earlier. Then now my choices will be influenced by that particular experience. Okay. So ultimately this particular schema is just trying to help us understand that there are like other social aspects which will be influencing on each and every level. So it will be influencing from your conversion of commodities to capabilities. It will be influencing on the state of capabilities as well, and then ultimately on the choices, and then finally it will convert into functionings. So just one point which I haven't discussed is about the uh, capability. So it also influence directly on the capability set. Okay. So for example, uh, in this social context we are also discussing about the legalities. Okay. So if uh, I may wish that like I need certain things, but those might be completely illegal, and then those things cannot become part of my capability set, right? It is not possible. I cannot include that over there. Rather, at least like when I'm designing policies, at that time it will be I will not be including those particular expectation, or I won't be available making those particular things available in the opportunity set. Okay, so ultimately, just not convergence or choices or freedoms, but the capability set itself will be affected by the social context. So its implication, how does it like reflect in the practical world? So basically, whatever program design we are doing for some other context might not be replicable directly in other contexts. In the sense, like if I go to UK and if I want to design certain program for, let's say, education or for literacy, then I might not be in position to replicate the same program here in India, because what people value over there, or what is their definition of good, might not be uh, replicatable over here. People here might be thinking something else. According to the people over here, the literacy might mean something different. Okay, so considering that, then you cannot implement or cannot execute or replicate any of the things which you are doing in other contexts, and cannot replicate it over here. So that is the implication of this particular point. Any thoughts on this? Yes. Shall we move ahead? Are you all okay with this particular discussion?
Yes, Sachin. I think this part where there is freedom to achieve with respect to capability set. So I think before the goods and services, they turn into the capability set, and after the capability set is turned into functionings. Both places there are external influences, and that is exactly where the freedom, uh, the role of freedom is coming into picture.
Yes, yes, yes.
And in a generalized way, even the personal history and psychology, I would say, uh, it is also with respect to how each and every person is brought up with respect to culture or family or everything that he or she learns. And only that that person is going to make individual choices, and from that the capability is going to get turned into the functioning, or even if the person is able to see that good or commodity as a capability or not, both the things. So
Yes,
that is
yes.
where the whole
Very much.
upbringing and parenting is going to play a major role, or the community influence is going to play the role in the person uh, seeing an opportunity as a capability, and capability getting turned into functioning.
Yes, yes, yes. So, with this particular figure, I was just trying to emphasize that there is an importance of social structure. There is an importance of overall sociological aspect. The society plays important role in deciding what we become. And then if that is important, then ultimately we need to understand that aspect in more depth. We need to understand how society will influence us, how society will will play its role. And then while designing any particular program or project for certain group of people, then we also need to consider this particular factor. We also need to give a cognizance to it. We should also understand the social context. So what does it mean? Is it like if I'm working as a program designer, then my responsibility would be just not to analyze the individuals whom I'm catering to, or who are my direct beneficiaries, but my responsibility is also to understand the social context. What are the different aspects out there? What are kind of culture they come with? What is the historical background they are in? And then what social factors exist out there? We may also need to understand the environmental factor as well. So all those things need to be analyzed, and then only you can design a effective or a better program. So that is one important aspect which I thought to highlight. And then this particular schema is really essential from that perspective. Obviously, there are like a lot of work people had done after this as well, and there are a lot of other aspects which people are emphasizing on. Slowly, we will just try to discuss all those things. But today's agenda is to just prepare a ground for discussion about our collectives, and then understand like how collectives uh, affect on the individual capabilities and its functioning. Perfect. Yes. So uh, before going ahead, I thought like let's have a very brief discussion on the point which we couldn't emphasize much earlier, and that is about the agency and freedom. And then we will also try to discuss certain misunderstandings about capitalism approach. Those are the very general misunderstanding, and we'll just try to very briefly touch upon those. Okay. So one thing about freedom. So freedom is basically the real opportunity that we have to accomplish what we value. So that is something which we had discussed, I guess, during our first or second session. And in that, we tried to understand like what is the importance of freedom. So it's basically our opportunity. It does not mean that like if you have capabilities, if you have all the possibilities out there, does not necessarily mean that we are getting freedom to execute those. There are influences. There are influences by various factors, and if those factors are influencing us, if those are not allowing us to pick from those opportunities, then basically we are not having freedom. And that is how Amartya Sen is trying to understand justice. If individual is not having freedom to choose from available capabilities, then basically it means that like individual is not having freedom, and justice is basically measured in that terms. Okay. So ultimately, what is just society? Just society is a kind of society where everybody get the opportunities and have choice to execute those opportunities. So that is how Amartya Sen is basically trying to explain the justice. Right. One very important aspect which is trying to highlight here, that freedom does not necessarily mean that like it's on paper and then you get freedom. Okay. So our constitution has written about freedom. It's talking about the various kind of freedoms, and then everybody is free and all those things. Does not necessarily mean that like it's effective. It does not mean that like everybody is getting chance to be free. Right. They're they are restricted in many ways. But here Amartya Sen is is emphasizing on this particular point, that like freedom should be measured, it should be understood in terms of like what actually they are experiencing, what they are going through. Okay. And just not on the basis of like what is mentioned in the papers, what is like provided in the ideal condition. He's not interested in that. Freedom he's measuring in terms of the practicalities, how people are executing those. Okay. So he's basically interested in understanding that part of freedom. Right. Any thoughts until now? Is it fine?
Yes, Sachin. This is good. Yeah.
Okay. Yes. So just last point, I'll just the last point in this particular slide, that is about like not necessarily direct control by individual groups or states, etc., can increase the freedoms by public action and investment. Okay. So this one particular point is also important. It is just trying to say that like freedom is something uh, might not be enhanced or cannot be increased just by influence of certain things. It is something which depend on the individual factors as well. Even if like society is ready to provide you freedom, does not necessarily mean that you will avail that freedom, does not necessarily mean you will work on that particular freedom. Okay. People may be having the personal restrictions as well. They may stop, and those personal factors may stop from utilizing the freedom. So that is one aspect it is trying to emphasize on. Yes. Now this is like one very important aspect, and I thought I was actually interested in discussing this particular slide, but I thought we just need to revise freedom, and that's why I did the earlier two slides. So this particular slide is just trying to describe freedom further. So it is saying that there are two aspects to freedom. One aspect is about the process aspect. Okay, it is talking about the ability to act on behalf of what matters, right? And then slowly we are just entering in agency. I'm not discussing much about agency because in next slide we'll be discussing about that. So it's basically the process aspect highlights that it's the freedom is the ability to act on behalf of what matters to us, whereas opportunity aspect that discusses the real opportunity to achieve valued functioning selected from among various good possibilities. That means it's basically talking about the capabilities. So freedom is on that particular aspect as well, in the sense while listing capabilities, at that time also one should have freedom. There should be a fair uh, fair opportunity should be made available to individuals. Okay, and then we are discussing about the equality of opportunities. Okay, so that is one aspect. The second is aspect which is about the process aspect. It just mentioning that does not necessarily mean that you have opportunities and you will translate it. So you also need ability to work on that. Okay, and that is the second aspect. Are you with me on this particular thing? There's two types of freedom.
So I don't know if this is the right question to ask right now.
Please, please
Yeah, so
go ahead.
basically, I think I've missed the last previous two sessions. I guess I don't know. So
Mhm.
I don't I wouldn't say that I have great clarity on the whole topic. But right now, when I've joined and I'm trying to
Mhm.
understand the difference between these two, I'm actually not able to understand clearly. Like if you
Okay,
could
okay, okay.
help with some very maybe a real life example, because these looks very much like jargons to me, and
Yes,
a lot of
yes.
word
I
concoction is happening right now. So yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So let's do one thing. We'll just try to explain it using certain examples, and then I guess it will be easier for you to digest. So basically, right now, in a simplistic term, we are discussing about freedom from a capitalist approach perspective. So for capitalist approach, freedom is something it can be looked from two perspectives. One is that we have already discussed about capabilities. So basically, capabilities is a set of opportunities available to an individual. Okay, now out of that, what that individual pick and then what it convert into functioning or what it convert into the final achievement, that is different story. Okay, but capability set just mention about the available opportunities. Now what this particular aspect is trying to say, what freedom in terms of opportunity is trying to say, that when we list those opportunities, at that time also individuals should have freedom. Okay, normally or sometimes it does happen that people are not getting opportunity to express anything, to decide what are their preferred choices. People are not getting even chance to express that. So ultimately freedom here is just trying to say that it should be a process where people will be consulted, people will be discussed with, and then based on the discussions we will list the opportunities, we'll figure out the uh, list of things which will be acceptable to maximum of them. Now once that list is available, then it depends on individuals how they convert, how they translate those into the functioning, how those individuals translate it into the achievement. And now
So
that conversion, yeah, please.
sorry. Would you like to first complete and then I'll go ahead?
Yeah, so ultimately the last point I was just trying to say that availability of opportunity, so listing of opportunities should also have freedom, and then conversion of that opportunity into functioning, that also need freedom. So freedom will be discussed at 2 point: one for listing, the other is conversion. Yes.
Okay. So for example, Sachin, while you were explaining,
Mm.
I can think of Yeah, I remember back in 2015,
Mm-hmm.
with respect to the national education policy, there were
Yes.
certain work that was going on.
Yeah.
The work had started back then, if I'm not wrong. So
Mm-hmm.
I remember there was this thing that the government had come up with. They wanted people who are in education sector, the teachers and all the educationists, to sort of give recommendations and advices of how things should go ahead in the policy. So that I see is the process aspect of
Yes.
the freedom, which, let's
Correct.
say, a person, I was I freshly passed out from the college, and yes, I was in the education sector, but I actively did not contribute anything in that suggestion, in that whole process. I did take part with the help of my organization.
Mm-hmm.
Organizationally, we were sort of giving advices, and it was
Mm-hmm.
all clubbed, and then advices were sent. But individually, I wouldn't say that I was very actively
Mm-hmm.
sort of taking the benefit of that opportunity that the
Mm-hmm.
state was providing to its citizen. So, like, does
Yes.
do I
Yes.
understand it
Yes.
correct?
Yes, yes, yes. So, just one thing, like, let me ask it to others. So now Nitu just mentioned one important aspect, that is policy consultation. So basically, we discuss with people, we float something in the public and then request their suggestions on that. Now, can you tell me, like, what kind of freedom it is? Is it a process freedom or opportunity freedom?
I I think I guess it's
Yeah.
process part because it has to do with the process of policy making, designing, and implementation.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just
Okay. Okay.
guessing.
Anybody else?
So
I
I
Yeah, please.
Yeah.
sorry, please go ahead. Go ahead.
Uh, if we have to say that it is on the policy making level,
Mm-hmm.
then the people who are getting to express, they are getting an opportunity
Mm-hmm.
to express what and how things should be.
Mm-hmm.
So and the people who are collecting uh, the suggestions, they are the agencies,
Mm-hmm.
because they have the ability to act on behalf of the people who are giving suggestions.
Mm-hmm.
So like
Yes.
it is on certain level, the people who are beneficiaries, or the ones who will be getting benefited, they are getting an opportunity to express, and then the agency is working on it, and then the refined policy is being executed, so that the beneficiaries again get the opportunity to take benefit from the refined version of it. So there are
Yes.
actually
Yes.
there are first opportunities coming in place, then the process is happening, and then the opportunity is coming back in a very refined form. This is
Yes.
how I
Yes.
could
That is.
understand.
Yes, yes. So exactly, I guess, like, as Oni mentioned, this is absolutely right. So when we do the policy consultation, at that time we are basically trying to design or trying to define the set of capabilities. So we are just trying to understand what different opportunities we should be providing to the individuals, to that certain group of beneficiaries. So when we, let's say, as Neetu rightly mentioned, one example of NEP. So in that particular case, we are just trying to understand what people value more. So somebody might be saying that, like, social aspects are important, and those need to be like discussed or studied during, let's say, in the middle school or in the higher schools. So that will be included over there. People will say that, like, the separate Anganwadis is not a good idea. The ICDS centers and Anganwadi should be working together. So that become one important aspect of the policies. Then people may say that, like, just just bookish knowledge is not sufficient. Children should get opportunity to go out of the classroom and then understand the world as well. And then for that purpose, policy might have recommendation that there will be outdoor activities as well. So there could be such n number of things which will become part of the policy, right? So does not necessarily mean that all school will execute everything or all state will execute everything. It's not possible, right? There are a number of constraints. You might not be having funds. Some things are not possible in certain geographies. There are a number of factors out there. Okay, so ultimately, policy consultation is giving us uh, the chance to express what we value. So ultimately, it's a freedom for listing your opportunities. It is freedom to build your capabilities set. Okay, so policy consultation is that part of it. Now, when it comes to conversion, okay, what things or what are the opportunities you pick from that particular policy, it really depending on that school, it depend on individuals, it depend on the states. Okay, so all these actors will pick certain thing from the available opportunities and then we'll work on that. Okay, now this particular execution part then will be considered as the process freedom. Okay, is it fine?
So Sachin, to reiterate or paraphrase what you said, so you are suggesting that, or rather, according to the whole concept, what it suggests is that with respect to the whole policy thing, when it is the part of implementation, that is the process aspect.
Yes, and then freedom in it. So it is just not implementation, because implementation can be that like government can force schools to implement something, but that is not freedom. Freedom is like if they get opportunity to pick from that and then work on it.
Okay, all right. I'm still trying to process. So for example, let's say if we take the same example, in that case,
Mhm.
the now that we have the policy in place,
Mm.
uh,
Mm.
the policy has come up with so many important things. For example, one of which is that from class 6 onwards,
Mm.
the children should also be sort of taught certain this thing,
Mm.
coding, and
Yes.
kitchen garden and other skills, right?
Yes.
So
Mhm.
but if whether the school has enough resources to implement that particular part of the policy or not, will become the process aspect of uh, you know this whole thing about freedom, the way we are trying to understand. am
Yes.
i
Yes.
am I understanding it correct?
Yes. So it will influence your freedom basically. If
Correct,
resources
correct, yeah.
are not available, then you might not be in position to work on it. So that is exactly how people do it. So basically, let's say people invite consultation, right? Policy consultation. But during policy consultation itself, like they just provide the let's say online form. Then when they provide online consultation form, they have already excluded the 50 or 60% of the majority, because those people might not be having access to smartphone. They might be having
Exactly.
smartphone, but they are not having like know how about it. And then if
Okay.
this kind of process we follow, then basically we are excluding certain people from contributing in the consultation. And then similarly, it is about the execution as well. During execution, if certain facilities are not available, if certain resources are not available, they might not be in position to pick those opportunities. Okay, let's say for example, if in this policy people recommend that like all children should be taught to do ice skating. No, it's good. It's good that you listed in that particular like NEP that this is like one good physical activity. But in Maharashtra, I cannot do that. I cannot pick it from there. So it's not. I'm not free to pick anything from that particular NEP. So I'm already restricted in that sense. Is it a good
Yeah,
example?
so
Is it a
so
real
the
one?
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, I understand the process aspect of freedom is clear. Now, like, how should I, like, I'm still not able to understand What is then the real opportunity to achieve valued functioning? Like, what is the opportunity aspect?
Mhm. So opportunity is listing itself. Freedom is conversion. Okay, so the process of freedom is converting those opportunities. Okay, but firstly you need the list of opportunities, right? So to free the opportunity freedom is to influence that listing.
Okay, all right. Okay, got it.
Yeah. In any other question on this? Or anybody would like to add any example, like if they experience something or they might have observed?
Mm, this is good, Sachin. I mean, we can go ahead. I mean, I'm
Yes.
fine.
Okay. Yeah. Perfect. So with this, like we come to the agency. Amni very briefly mentioned about agency while she was explaining the process freedom. So within that, like I consider that agency is the ability to influence. So in a very simplistic term, that is what we call agency in sociological aspect. Okay, and then it could be anything. So people coming together and then influencing something, that is also agency. People like using certain institutions and then influencing something, then that can also be called as agencies. Okay, so agency is basically uh, so from this particular definition, it is like what a person is free to do and achieve in pursuit of whatever goals and values he or she regards as important. So whatever important from my perspective, if I'm getting freedom to execute that or achieve that, then basically it's an agency. So ultimately agency is something like very essential from the capitalist perspective, because ultimately we are interested in understanding whether people are in position to achieve their well-being or not. Okay, so they should be having opportunity to influence those things, influence the capabilities listing, to influence the conversion of that capabilities into functioning, right? So from that perspective I consider agency is really important, right? I'll just quickly come to this particular paragraph, and I thought like we'll read it together. But let's do one thing. You all can read it. I'll just wait for a minute or two, and then we'll try to discuss it at depth, at length. Yes. So are we done?
Sachin, I got caught up in this space where it. When I started with the first and second line, it says that we are putting individuals and the humans in the center of the stage rather than the organizations, markets, or governments.
Yes.
Uh, and in then it is mentioning around in sixth line that
Mhm.
it's a useful reminder not to view individuals and their opportunities in isolated terms. So
Yes,
yes,
it's contradictory.
yes, yes.
Yes.
So
So let's. Yeah, so let's try to first understand that opening statement itself. I was also like stuck at that particular point, and that is the reason I thought to include this particular thing. And then you can see that I had highlighted that as well. So I guess when we are giving importance to human agency and not to the organizational factors like market, government, state, and then sometimes there are certain institutions which are also having the organizational like the setup, and then we are not interested in basically those kind of agencies here. Amartya Sen is basically trying to understand the agency in the human form. So basically, it's very simple. What basically capitalist approach is basically interested in understanding how human achieve their well-being, how human achieve what they value for. Okay, so ultimately, if those individuals uh, is not in position to influence this entire process, okay, if they are not in a position to influence the listing of capabilities, then they will not be able to achieve the final functionings. Okay, ultimately the market forces and governments may influence us. Okay, but if they start deciding what you have value, then those are not your actual aspirations. So let me just give a very quick example. uh, in Maharashtra we have like so many engineering colleges that people like in the sense all the colleges don't even get the students for them. So there are vacant seats every year. So those many engineering colleges we do have in Maharashtra. Okay, so does it mean that there are so many students who are actually interested in becoming engineer? Does it mean that? Surely not. It was basically the requirement. So I'm sure that like you are aware of OECD, right? So they decide, or they basically predict like how many professionals are required in certain sector. So based on the market analysis, based on the understanding, based on the demand and supply and all those things, they basically predict. And now based on their predictions, people start their businesses. So that was the reason then there like so many engineering colleges actually got opened in Maharashtra. Now I'm talking about today's case, like when they don't have students, but there was a case, there was a situation when all the engineering colleges were full. Okay, so at that time I consider that like people were just uh, considering the uh, whatever was available in the media, what was like circulated in the news as the influencing factor, and then because of that then they opted to enter in the engineering college. Or the same thing today is happening with the management. So today everybody want to become MBA, right? So ultimately market forces are influencing everything, is influencing the choices, is influencing what people pick for the available opportunities, right? Now Amartya Sen is just trying to say that it is not good. So market cannot work as an agency. He's interested in the human agency. He's interested in understanding what that individual want, whether he's in position to influence the opportunity set and to convert those opportunity set into the functionings. Is it fine? Are you with me, or I lost already?
Yeah, we no, things are getting unsettled. We are right
Yes.
here, but we are trying to get past it.
Yes. Okay.
Yeah.
Perfect.
So I
So
think, yeah, I think the when one thing that you mentioned, that market forces is deciding everything, and um, uh, the market forces is being the agency, and that is where Amartya Sen is trying to say this is not good, and humans and their needs and what they want to achieve needs to be in focus rather than what the markets are trying to give them. So this is where I think I can now understand why opportunities in isolated terms is coming into picture, where individual needs are not being isolated, but instead the different needs are actually brought on the common platform where the policies or the execution level decisions are being made in such a way so that the resources can be supplied to fulfilling the fulfilling the desires that the individual want. Am I going in the right direction?
Yeah, so I'm not entirely sure like what you're trying to say, but like let me quickly explain, and then you can add if I'm
Absolutely.
going in
Yeah.
the right direction. So yes, so what you're basically trying to say that like if market forces and then individual choices are like getting influenced, then in that case it will be good to provide the resources first, and then let individuals decide like what they value for, and accordingly they can pick the choices. That is what you're saying, right? If I'm not wrong.
No, 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 not that. With respect to, I'm agreeing with what the first statement is trying to say, that
Okay.
the humans should be in the center of the stage, and they are supposed to be the agencies, and they are supposed to be the ones who are going to decide and tell that what they would be wanting, rather than the external forces telling them that you need this or that this is required. For
Right, right.
example, being India being an agrarian economy, itne engineers were not required.
Exactly.
But the way the engineering colleges opened, I think we would rather want more farming colleges rather than engineering colleges.
Right,
So
right.
something like that. But
Yes, yes.
I think so. When the need of that person is
Mm,
put into the picture, and I was trying to correlate where I got confused with respect to their individuals and their opportunities are not kept in isolated terms. They are not viewed as isolated people, like
mm,
entities.
mm,
So this is where I'm trying to correlate that uh, their requirements are also brought on the common platform. Like
mm,
they are not isolated, they are brought on the common platform and then they are addressed to, so that the
mm.
bulk resources are channelized in proper way, not through market forces, but according to the need of the individuals.
Yes, yes, yes. And then this responsibility lies with the government. Government is supposed to distribute it equally, and then just not getting influenced by the market. That is what government should be doing, right?
Yeah, so here the when the second statement is saying rather than organizations such as markets or governments, so
Yes.
in this statement, I'm considering market and government being the same place, but government's
No.
role should not be in that way. It should be
Mhm.
more on identifying what the people need and then channelizing the resources in order to provide what the individuals need.
Yes, yes. And then if you remember our earlier conversations, surely not in this particular class, but like when we were discussing in the other class, that time we had discussed that like government also play a crucial role in deciding like what people should think, for what people should value, and then what opportunities are provided to them. And then all those decisions are basically influenced by what certain party want, what certain individuals want. Okay, so just saying that government will take responsibility of controlling market, that is not happening. That is not the role state is playing. State is basically working the other way around. They are firstly interested in fulfilling their own expectation. Okay, and then only they are thinking about people. So ultimately, then uh, government is also one of the agency which is not working uh, as like how should it work ideally. It is not functioning as per the expectation. It is also deviated, right? And then obviously if it is not functioning as per expectation, then obviously it might not be in position to take care of individuals interest. And For that purpose, we need civil society. For that purpose, we need active citizens. For that purpose, we need individuals who can question the government. Okay.
Right, Sachin. Yeah.
Yes. Perfect. Perfect. So, before going ahead, like Shrey or Khedlekar sir, do you want to add something? Do you agree to this particular thing, or do you have some other thoughts?
That's fine. Absolutely okay.
Yes. Okay. Great. Thanks. Yeah. So we will move ahead, but like when Avni had mentioned about the last point in the same slide, and that was about the influences of social circumstances and public policies. So I consider like even though individuals are we are considering them at the center stage, and then we want everything to be understood from what kind of agency they can create. Okay, if you want to understand it from that perspective, even then we cannot ignore that social circumstances are there, and those are like really playing a good role. There are certain possibilities, there are certain chances in which the social factors are influencing to such an extent that like people don't even think that like whatever happening with them is wrong. It influenced to that an extent. And then there is one good sociological term which is hegemony. So people might be hegemonic, people might be in hegemonic state, which says like people are not aware of like what is happening with them. They're like completely into something. They are not in position to understand that the factors around them actually forcing them to do something. They feel that like they are doing it by themselves, but it is not actually the case. There are certain other things which are forcing them into it. Okay, so those things does exist, even though we are like emphasizing on human agency. That human agency might also be influenced by the social factors, right? So that is that the last point is trying to say. Good. So shall we move ahead? This is one last point which I have thought to discuss today, and it basically it's end of a discussion about the collectives related thing. Okay, so the collective in the sorry, it's the end of our discussion related to introduction to capabilities, and then we'll from next session we'll jump into collectives directly. Okay, so misunderstanding. The first one is that the breadth goes beyond the health and education. So normally when people discussing about the capabilities approach, then they normally try to think about the health, education, and there are a few other domains as well, like poverty. So people try to like relate capabilities approach with these domains only, but it goes far beyond that. It is an approach to understand the well-being, and then whatever people consider well-being, like whatever different aspects people consider part of well-being, all those can become part of capabilities approach as well. So it has a huge breadth. First thing. The other thing is like it is deliberately incomplete. Now this point we have discussed already, but let me explain it again. Amartya Sen is trying to say that like this is incomplete because we cannot so in the sense like when we are having a discussion about the specific critique, that is about the under theoretization. So during that we had discussed that this particular point, and then we said that the listing of capabilities is missing. But here Amartya Sen is trying to say that like I kept it incomplete deliberately so that you can contextualize it. If I list the capabilities, and then if you go to certain different geography in some other context, then you might not be in position to implement those capabilities as it is. Okay, so it might be challenging for you to work on those capabilities. So instead of that, then Amartya Sen preferred to keep that thing incomplete. Okay, are you with me until now? This incomplete, deliberately keeping incomplete, is it fine?
Can we
Yeah, fine.
connect? Can we connect one more dimension to it with respect to not listing down the absolute list of capabilities? Is it in the
Mhm.
same zone?
Yes, exactly the same
Okay.
discussion.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay. Yeah. Then we also discussed about individualism, and then we had like discussion at length. But here, like it is emphasizing on one important aspect, that is the individualism uh, is just from the ethical perspective. It is not from the methodological perspective. Now, this difference is essential for our discussion about collectives. So, what it is saying is that, like, from the ethical considerations, we want to understand what every individual want. Does not necessarily mean that while implementing, while executing, we will be accommodating or considering every individual's view. We'll be accommodating that, but we'll be averaging out, and then based on that we'll be taking out something which can cater to the maximum number of people. Okay, it does not mean that every individual's choices will become part of the policy. That is not possible practically. Okay, so in the philosophical term, from the ethical point of view, we are giving importance to individual. Okay, we'll try our best, we try our maximum to make sure that every individual's expectations, aspirations will be considered and the opportunity will be provided for that, but does not necessarily mean that it will become part of the policies. People, we might not be in position to consider every individual's aspirations in that, but we will try to cover the maximum of them, right? And then one last point, that is
Uh,
about evaluation. Yeah, please.
one more. Yeah. So, as you mentioned, individualism is not methodological, right? So there are bound to be some people or some sections of the community that are not benefiting as we had intended to from the policy.
Yes.
So wouldn't that kind of segment the society into majorities and minorities, and
Yes.
it might lead to further conflicts like it is today.
Yes.
Some point.
Yes. Yes. You are perfectly right. So it's basically a very majoritarian approach in that sense. Okay, but at least it is different in the sense that, like, we are at least listening to others. So the example which Neetu mentioned was about policy consultation. So that I consider like is a very important aspect where, like, you are listening to individuals. Now, whether you will be able to give justice to every point, that's a different story. It might not be possible, right? And it become even more difficult when you are working at the national level, because, like, people are diverse. People are diverse. There are like various different ideologies. People are coming with various different backgrounds, different geographical conditions, different historical background, and then they might be having very different things to aspire for. Okay, then it is not possible for you to accommodate each and everything in one policy. And then obviously, then you basically pick something which, like, maximum of them are valuing for.
Yeah.
And now it really depends on the government, like how they want to process it. Now,
Okay.
there could be a majority of persons like who are valuing something, but government may decide to consider somebody else's position, depending on their ideologies, depending on their preferences, depending on their personal choices, their personal agendas, their future term plans. So a number of things based on which policies are designed. Policy design is not a straightforward thing. Obviously, there are a lot of hidden agendas in it.
Okay.
Yes. Perfect. So the next important point is about evaluative and the prospective analysis. Can somebody help me understand the difference between these two? What is the evaluative analysis and what is the prospective analysis? Okay, so let me quickly add and then we'll come back to discussion again. So evaluative, I guess, like, we are running short of time. Let me cover it little quickly. Yes. So evaluative framework is obviously you do evaluation on something which has like already happened, which you are already designed, which you are already implementing, and then only you can do the evaluation. Evaluation is not possible beforehand. So it's a post activity. Whereas prospective analysis is something like you do while planning something. to try to understand like what is required in the future, right? Now, here, capabilities approach is a evaluative framework. It gives you chance to evaluate certain things. Now, it may be that like you want to evaluate the situation. You want to evaluate like why people are in this particular situation for so long. And if you want to understand that, then this particular framework can be used. It is not for the prospective analysis. That is not primarily it is meant for. It gives you lens to look towards certain things which are already existing over there. It is not to predict how this particular society will shape into. So it's basically to look towards what has happened in the past. Obviously, after looking at the past, you can design your policies, but this particular framework will not help you interpret something. It won't help you in predicting something. It is not made for that. Are you with me on this point?
Yeah, this is where, yeah, because it is an approach and that we are trying to do something out of whatever opportunities are going to be available. According to that, I feel like I'm able to settle for both the things right now. But as you mentioned, that this works only with respect to the present situations and what has already happened in past, and that we cannot, and this framework will not help us to uh, take things with respect to how the society is going to shape up into. So that is something that I'm getting stuck with.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. So I guess like when you are okay with like that it's evaluation of present and the past. Okay. So till that point, it's perfectly fine. But what I'm just trying to say that like sometimes some models are for the predictions. In the sense, you might have seen that people make predictions that after 30 years, there will be, let's say, this particular GDP will increase to this particular level, or India's economic situation will be this, or there will be this number of people who will shift to US. Okay, so people do predictive analysis, right? But for this kind of predictive analysis, this framework is not good, because we are analyzing something which people value in present and what are their past experiences. Okay, and as we had discussed earlier, as people move ahead, their choices, their preferences, their aspirations, everything changes, right? So using this particular framework, it is impossible to understand how things will shape in the future. So it's basically contradictory to the philosophical foundation itself.
Right. So the philosophy basically focuses on the well-being and what people value right now, and then trying to find ways and means to achieve it. And this is, as it is ever evolving, this framework which focuses on the current state will not be able to project what is going to come in future.
Yes.
So hence it is evaluative and not prospective.
Exactly.
Okay. All right.
Yes. Perfect. So I guess like this is something which I had planned until now. But for next session, we'll be starting with a discussion on collectives. So I just thought to have a very quick discussion about that. I just want to understand few things. So the first important thing is to understand, like, can we increase our timing to 2 hours? Because I consider that like 1 hour is very less